Hello and welcome. In this unit, we'll discuss transitions. Our goals in this unit are 1. To understand the legal requirements of the transition process, and 2. To have you become familiar with the process, including 3 core areas that should be addressed during any transition plan. But first, let's define what we mean by transitions. Well, depending on the age of your child, you might be envisioning different things. If your child is young, you're probably envisioning transitions from preschool. If your child is a bit older, you might be envisioning transitions from middle school to high school. Well, for the purpose of this unit, we're going to be discussing transitions into adulthood. That is, the time after your child leaves school. If your child is still young, please stay with us, even if you think this topic is something you won't deal with for another decade. Why? Well, because eventually you'll go through transition planning. The sooner you start learning the terms and ideas behind transitions, the better off you and your child will be. So let's begin with a discussion of the law. The law requires that students who receive special education be provided services to help them make a successful transition from school to life after post-secondary school by focusing on 3 specific areas. 1. Further education, 2. Employment, and/or 3. Independent living. Under the law, schools should start transition planning beginning at age 16. Please note some districts have policies where transition planning begins earlier. For example, LAUSD begins their planning when a student is 14 years old. Transition planning is done through an ITP, which sounds very much like an IEP. An ITP stands for an Individualized Transition Plan. Like all IEPs, all ITPs should be unique to the needs of the student. If you notice, they both have individualized in their names. Also, like an IEP, there isn't one universal form or template that all schools use. Of course, like IEPs, all ITPs should have certain information. At a minimum, an ITP should discuss the needs, if any, of a student in 3 core areas: education, employment, and/or independent living. In many cases, ITP meetings will be rolled into IEP meetings. This is perfectly okay if you and your child are given the opportunity to adequately discuss the topic of transition. In general, here are some rules that should be followed during the ITP process. Adequate notice should be given to the student's parents or guardian of an ITP meeting if the parent is still the parental rights holder. Like IEPs, the student should be invited to any ITP meeting at which transition services will be discussed. The IEP meeting should ensure that necessary outside agencies are at the ITP meeting. The ITP meeting must be based on the academic, developmental, and functional needs of the student. The IEP team must consider the student's strengths, interests, and preferences when designing transition services. The ITP should include the projected date for beginning provision of services, including transition services, and the anticipated frequency, location, and duration of such services. The ITP must include a statement of vocational goals based upon transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and independent living skills. Along with these general rules, another important thing to remember is that the law calls for a results-oriented process, which means that the ITP should have specific outcomes. For example, saying that Randy will live independently doesn't say much, but laying out a plan for Randy to learn how to use public transportation, go grocery shopping, things like that, gives us more information of how Randy will be moving towards his or her post-school life. But how do you know what should be in an ITP? Like the IEP, an ITP should use evaluations to identify the student's needs and abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. A parent can ask for a formal transition assessment, which, as we learned in the assessment unit, might be composed of formal or informal assessments. While each student will be evaluated differently, make sure the process is thorough. An entire transition plan should not be based on a 15-minute interview someone at the schools conducts with your child. So what needs should be addressed in an ITP? Every evaluation will show a different student need. Some of the services schools may provide include community experiences, paid work experiences or volunteer experiences, resume writing techniques, assistance in researching colleges or vocational programs, training on how to navigate public transportation or obtaining a license, training on how to develop a budget or how to cook, and so on. Okay, let's talk about some big picture issues. An important thing to remember about transitions is that it really does signal the end of your student's time in the K-12 school environment. As such, the law says that there needs to be some sort of wrap-up. Under the law, students should receive a summary of their academic and functional performances in the school, including recommendations to assist them in meeting their post-secondary goals. This isn't just a nice way to say goodbye. Remember, if a student continues to college, they will need this information as part of the information they will give to their new school. Unlike K-12, in college, the student has the responsibility to approach the school and let them know of their need for accommodations or modifications. This summary of performance will be a great piece of evidence to share. Let's discuss another big picture issue that comes up with transitions. At 18, the vast majority of students will become their own educational rights holder. That means that they will make their own educational decisions. In another unit, we'll further explore this, but for now, I think it's important to just remember this aspect of your child's education experience. In the vast majority of cases, the goal of transitions is to have your child become an independent adult. That is, like their non-disabled friends or siblings, they should strive to one day live independently and free from their parents' decision-making and oversight. Since this is the end goal, when you start the transition process, take advantage of this time to make sure that your child is well equipped to navigate the special education system and what comes after. Make sure you take the time to teach your child everything you learned on your journey through the special education system, including how to handle IEPs and therefore ITP meetings. With that, we'll end this unit. In later units, we'll cover in depth some of the topics we spoke about, such as transferring of educational rights. In the meantime, here are a few resources for you. You can access our Special Ed Toolkit online and read Chapter 16 on transitions for more information. If you're in the LA area, you can also call us for an intake if you're having any trouble with your child's transition plan. Well, thanks for joining us, and goodbye for now.